Journalists are people, and as any other person, they have opinions and ideas. It may sound obvious, but it is not, and this is because their jobs depend on their credibility, which is also based in their ability to be perceived as balanced and fair. In this context, social media present a challenge for them, since the personal and the professional get easily mixed online, and opinions that they usually kept in private may be leaked to the general public, having an effect on their jobs and potential employability. In this video, journalists that were reprimanded, suspended, or fired because of their social media behavior analyze whether expressing opinions online is advisable for journalists or not. Also, they consider if there are exceptions and which would be the consequences of openly expressing ideas online.
Of course, for sure. You should have opinion. They have opinion. You should express. There's no reason to hide it, especially today. Makes no sense at all. It's better than to be more, let's say, we're gonna understand better the journalists. Like the truth is more important than. And then try to pretend that they have no opinion of anything, that doesn't exist at all. It is ridiculous. No, you have good and bad journalists. You have people who write crap and people who are really good journalists who are interested, more about the things that they are covering. And it makes no sense, actually. Like, it's better to be true, to say, like, what's your opinion? Like the American press, New York Times always say in the beginning of the election that we're going to support Obama. And that's okay, then they're gonna cover, now you know how they are covering. I mean, it's always better if you know more about the one who is covering the subject. And in this sense, this political opinion doesn't make many difference because the candidates, for example, they don't want to talk to everyone. Of course, they can choose the ones who are better for them, but they will talk at the end. They will talk to the press, not the journalist itself, but the Guardian, the Sun. It depends. So, like, they will talk. It doesn't matter. But it's much better to understand better who is the one who is producing, who is writing the text. And that's not only in journalism, everywhere.
So if you're covering a news beat, or if you're covering a particular topic or a particular company or things like that, obviously, even if you have an opinion, expressing it publicly could cause people to think that you're biased or you have a point of view. I think you give rise to the perception that maybe you're biased. So I think it's better to avoid giving that perception. So if I were covering politics, or if I were covering a particular news feed as a reporter or as an editor, I would generally recommend refraining from having opinions on that topic, because if you do, then it is possible people will think that, okay, he or she has this opinion. I just don't trust them to be objective about it, even if you are. So I think it's better to be not public with your opinion on something that you are supposed to be writing about.
Whether you agree or disagree, I feel that people in the public eye, especially on issues of such importance and of such magnitude, I believe at the end of the day, before we're broadcasters, we are human beings who are invested in the lives that we lead and the culture of which we are a part of. And so I'm not kitty barring the door and saying, you can't speak of certain things. I understand there are certain things that are obviously off topics, hate speech and so forth. But it is not an act of hatred to espouse a Christian belief. I think we have to take care with how we engage on social media, the same way we would have to take care when we're disciplining our kids or having a discussion with our wife about differing opinions on how we go about our household duties. I mean, that's what I really believe. This is really not a difficult issue. We should all be engaging on social media, but we also have to mind our P's and Q's on exactly how we go about doing that.
Well, I've always said, journalists are human. We all have, when it's time to vote, we have certain people we vote for, we have certain feelings. But having said that, I really don't think people who give the news should always openly express, and I know this sounds very awful considering what I just said, but I really feel if there is a controversial stance, I feel that in the interest of being fair, we can keep our personal lives to ourselves in that regard. Now, if there is something that there is a greater good that you can get behind, by all means, I would say lend your name and your talent to something that is positive. But sometimes I think a lot of journalists accidentally or accidentally on purpose express controversial views in the name of what is right and what is wrong, when clearly that I think their intent is probably a little more sinister. I'll be honest with you. It's really so much of a case-by-case basis. I mean, a prime example was the whole Bring Back Our Girls movement. I mean, you had people from all walks of life talking about Bring Back Our Girls, and journalists even expressed that for those African girls. But here in the United States, however, we have controversial messages like, we have this big thing with universal health care and gun control and that sort of thing. Those hot topic buttons, I would say, kind of keep your opinions to yourself on that. But again, if there's a greater good, and there's really a thin line that can be walked along that. So honestly, the safe answer is just leave your opinions to yourself or to your small circle of friends and don't express it. That's always the safe way to go. And again, like I said, I can't necessarily rule that out either, but I would say greater good, feel free. But if there's something controversial that you have to report on day in and day out, and there's a clear two sides to it, you should probably just leave it alone.
I mean, it's hard to generalize, and it depends on the amount of opinions you express and the nature of opinions and all of that. But if you had one opinion about, let's say, I'm giving a hypothetical, if you express some opinion about President Obama once or twice in, let's say, 3-4 years, and somewhere down the line you are required to cover politics, then I think it may not be that much of an issue. But if you have consistently had opinions and you've expressed them about President Obama, and then you're covering the White House, I think then it becomes a problem. At the end of the day, what matters is whether your audiences and your readers perceive whether you can be independent and you can be objective. And if your past track record makes that difficult, then I think the news organization is put in a very awkward situation of readers not believing what you might be saying. So I think it's just it's a case-by-case issue. But obviously, if I have strong views on immigration and I've expressed that over a long time, I probably would have a hard time being taken seriously as an objective writer about immigration. On the other hand, if you're a columnist and you've written a lot about, let's say, football, and you've expressed a lot of opinion, and you're asked to write about football again, in that case, it may be valuable. So it depends on the circumstances.
I think it can, and I think especially as a young journalist, professionally, it makes so much sense to leave your options open. Because if you said, if you're in the UK, for example, and you outed yourself as a Tory supporter, then you might find that an organisation that supports the other side of politics that wanted to hire you won't hire you once they see that on your feed. So it's really just a matter of leaving your career options open by not necessarily declaring either way. I think for a journalist, you're getting into murky territory whenever you start putting your own personal comments to a story on Facebook or Twitter. Although, for some journalists who write opinion pieces, I guess that is the nature of their work, so that's okay. It's just such a murky area at the moment because we live in an age where all of a sudden everybody is publishing. Everybody's publishing all the time, and the ability to do that has happened before people have worked out guidelines about what they should and shouldn't do around that.
You are exposed when you are a journalist. When you are online, you are exposed not because you yourself, you're subjected to, but because you have the visibility of the press. Of course, you should take care of anything. It's there. It doesn't mean that you don't have to express opinion. It's different. You cannot write anything online, as you cannot say anything that you want to say in a bar. If you offend someone, if you are writing about something that's not finished yet, then you put that online, of course it may put you in trouble. But that happens. That's not a particularity of journalism. The only thing is that you are more exposed, so you should take care of that.
Okay, so my rule now with Facebook is anything that I wouldn't stand on a street corner and shout out, I don't put on Facebook. So that's the filter I run it through now. If I wouldn't be prepared to just stand on a street corner and say it, then there's no need for me to say it on Facebook.
In a context of blurred lines between what is private and what is public, journalists deal with the challenges of social media by exercising a certain self-censor in controversial or political matters, even though some of them are more lax regarding to which is the limit for their opinions. Caution and common sense seem to be the two key rules in their social media behaviors, even though some journalists consider that the freedom of speech should protect them for being fired or suspended because of saying what they think online.